Hi everybody, my name is Aryani Sahoda, and today I'll be talking about the foundations of medical terminology and the types of rules that apply to it when you want to be able to use medical terminology in certain types of scenarios that you may be in. Alright, so first we'll be talking about the word parts that are included in medical terms. So, these word parts are going to include prefix, root and combining form, as well as suffix. Alright, so now that we know what the word parts of medical terms are, we're going to take the chance to see what each of these mean in the medical terms. We're first going to start with prefix. Now, prefix primarily always begins the medical terminology. So, prefix is usually the quantity, location, or the negation of a medical term. But sometimes these will not always be used in some cases. Alright, next we're going to go towards the root of the word. Now the root is going to be the most important part of a medical term. Why? Because it's the foundational meaning as well as the structure and the system of a medical term. So you always want to look out for these. Alright, so the next part of a medical term is also going to be the combining form. Now the combining form is not that different from the root. The combining form is usually just the root including a combining vowel, which also examples just in a bit. And then last but not least is the suffix. The suffix is typically the end of a medical terminology. Typically, the suffix defines the condition, the study, or the equipment of a medical term. Alright, so now that you know what each part of a medical term means, we're going to view some examples for each part of a medical term. So first, we're going to start with examples of the prefix. So the first one I have here is hyper, which means above or more than normal. Next, I have Brady, which means slow. And then last, I have hypo, which means below or less than normal. Alright, next we'll be going over examples of root and combining forms. So first, we have neuro, which means the nerve. Next, we have hemo, which means blood. And then lastly, we have hydro, which means water or fluid. And just to keep in mind, the O in the end of a root is the combining vowel, which makes the total root a combining form. Alright, then lastly, we have suffixes. So first, we have a gram, which means picture or graph. Then we have itis, which means infection or inflammation of. And lastly, we have oma, which means mass or tumor. There are some things that you do have to keep in mind before you do start building the medical terms. Just so you know, a dash will always be after the prefix, so that is another way to determine that that type of word part is a prefix. Next, a combining form will have the slash and a combining vowel, typically O, after its root to determine that that word part is a combining form. And then lastly, a suffix will have a dash before the word part to determine that that is a suffix. So, next, before building your medical terms, there are some rules that you want to think about before building your medical terms. First, when you're building your medical terms, you always want to start from the suffix to the root or combining form to the prefix. So essentially, you're going to be starting from the right to the left of a medical term. Another rule to think about is when you have a combining form that includes the combining vowel as well as a suffix that begins with a vowel, what you're going to do is you're going to drop the slash as well as the O from the combining form. Then you will drop this dash from the suffix and then move the rest of the suffix with the combining form, essentially making the word hematitis. Alright, next I'll be showing you some examples on how to build medical terms. We've already went through one, which is hematitis, so we'll go through two others as well. Next we have three terms, hyper, tenso, and ion. We have hyper, which means above or more than normal, tenso, which means pressure or resistance, as well as ion, which is the condition or state of. So when we apply the rules to build a medical term, we want to start with the suffix. So here, you'll connect the ion to the medical term, make sure the dash is put away. Then we take tenso, and since the suffix begins with a vowel, you want to remove the combining vowel from the combining form, which means tense. So just like that. Then finally, we have the prefix, which you'll put in the beginning of the word, and then you'll remove the dash. And essentially, that will make the word hypertension, which means the state of excessive pressure. And then lastly, we have hepato and itis. Hepato meaning liver, and itis meaning inflammation of. So we apply the same rules. Take the suffix, remove the dash, and then take your combining form, and then make sure, since suffix begins with a vowel, you want to remove the combining vowel from the combining form, essentially making hepatitis, which is the inflammation of the liver. Alright, next we'll be talking about how to break terms to define them. First, we have neuritis. The same rule applies. You want to separate the suffix first and then go from right to the left of the medical term. So itis being the suffix, while neuro being the combining form. Itis meaning infection or inflammation of, and neuro meaning nerve. In total, the definition of this medical term is infection or inflammation of the nerve. Next, we have hepatogram. Gram, you'll take out first, which means picture or graph, and hepato meaning liver, essentially meaning a picture or graph of the liver. And last but not least, we have cardiology. Take out logi, which means study of, and then cardio, which means heart, so making the word study of the heart. There are some similar sounding suffixes with different definitions. Here are some additional suffixes with its meanings as well as example terms.